I'd been actively seeking a spiritual life since the age of 13. I was having an interreligious dialogue with myself as a Christian and then as a Hindu. My mother didn't know what a Hindu was. When I came home and I had a shaven head, she thought I'd joined a punk rock band. I didn't stop reading Christianity or Islam or Buddhism in Hinduism because I wanted to see what is everyone saying. So I don't have any educational qualifications.
And you're teaching in the university, running a full center.
The religion is very important for bringing people together.
We are looking at the Indian tradition from a Western lens.
Yes. Things aren't global unless the world takes the Indian perspective seriously. The unfortunate thing is that India hasn't taken the Indian way of thinking seriously. Sometimes I say I'm an Irish Catholic Hindu.
This is India, a story in the making, and I'm your host, Lavina Tandon.
Hello and welcome to India, a story in the making. What happens when a little boy raised in a small town in Ireland, raised as a Christian, is drawn towards the teachings of Hinduism? Is faith inherited or can it be discovered? Can it exist without the labels of religion? And if it does, what does it look like? Well, it looks like Shaunaka Rishi does, the founder and director of Oxford Centre for Hindu Studies, also the chaplain, Hindu chaplain to the Oxford University first in 800 years. He's a broadcaster, he teaches communication, and he teaches Hindu studies as well. I want to explore his journey, but also go beyond it and see what is it about Hinduism that the world is not seeing. Is it still relevant in days and times today? And somewhere I want to be guided by the question, God beyond boundaries. Can faith exist without religion? Welcome to India, Story in the Making.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Can I call you Shaunaka?
Yes, please. It's my name.
It wasn't really.
Wasn't always my name, that's true.
Yes, true. Before I ask the question about the name, I want to find out about this Oxford Centre for Hindu Studies. When you opened it 30 years back, it was the first centre in the whole of the world. No Hindu study centre existed in India as well. How is that?
Yes, it was the first centre at this level, at the academic level. There are many centres for Hinduism, but it's not a Hindu centre, it's a Hindu study centre, and that was the distinction. And people in India, if India doesn't take it seriously, why would anyone else have to take it seriously? And in India they didn't take it seriously because a decision was made at independence by Nehru that no religion should be taught at any level of the educational system. So you don't see it taught. It's only in the last 2 years that this has begun to change. But for over 75 years, you've had a situation where people don't have the intellectual vocabulary to critically analyze faith and reason and combine these things. They haven't really got into philosophy. These things have become very devalued. It's all mythology. It's all discredited. Because if it's not in the education system, why should young people take it seriously? I mean, they're only going to take seriously things that are going to be examined, especially in the Indian education system. I'm not so sure how educational it is. It's about training to pass exams rather than education per se. Education is helping people learn how to think. But really it's about passing exams. And if it's not on the curriculum, if it's not an exam to be passed where you can't get points to go further into education or an occupation, why would you do it? So if your elders aren't taking it seriously, it's not serious. So that's the unfortunate circumstance that India fell into, I think a little bit by accident. But I would have thought that India was the perfect place to teach religion in a broad context, because that's how it has always existed in India.
Why religion? I mean, religion is now sometimes seen as obstructive to growth, spiritual growth.
Yes, and that's that kind of analysis is based, I think, on a poor fund of knowledge. People don't know much about religion because they don't study it, so they just speculate about it. and they just blame it for this and that and the other thing. I think we have to approach these things more intelligently if we actually want to solve our problems. We can't just ascribe problems to certain areas of our life with a kind of a prejudice. Prejudice just means lack of knowledge. So the whole Indian project intellectually since time immemorial has been about knowledge. Find knowledge, find yourself. So if we just say religion, so in an Indian context, you use the word religion. There's no equivalent to the word religion in any Indian language. This is an imported word. So how is it relevant to be able to put it on top of any Indian tradition and find meaning? You can't find meaning in it because the word doesn't relate. So you have yoga, you have dharma, you have sadhana, you have different processes, and they're multifarious. There's a lot of choice, and no one's saying that there isn't choice. It's not either or. Either you do this or you do that. It's never been like that in India. So when we use the word religion from a different cultural context where it seems to be either or, especially in that field, that will cause conflict. But why would Indians adopt that word to describe themselves when it's not part of their tradition? Their tradition is quite contrary to that. It's always both and. So if in an Indian context I meet you and you're from Gujarat and I'm from Tamil Nadu, we have different languages, different cuisines, different cultures, and I ask you, what do you do? What's your religion? What's your sadhana? And the person, if I say sadhana, it's relevant because they're going to say, I get up at 4 a.m. into Brahma Muhurta hour, I chant, I do meditation, I do yoga or whatever. I'm a vegetarian, I serve people all day in the name of God. And I think, oh, that's a very fine sadhana. I don't care what religion you call yourself. It's going to be a Gujarati word that I don't understand. I don't care who your guru is because he's a person I never heard of. But your sadhana, your practice, is very good. Now, if you happen to be a Christian or a Muslim and you have the same sadhana in an Indian context, that's very good. If you're a Hindu and you say, I get up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I have a beer, I smoke a few cigarettes, I go down and I gamble on the horses, and then I go out clubbing at 10 o'clock and I come home at 4 o'clock in the morning and go to bed, then I know that you're an idiot. And I don't care if you call yourself a Hindu or a Muslim or a Jew, it's not relevant. So the questions are different. What you're looking for out of a relationship is different. And it's there's a non-sectarian kind of a way to it. You have your sadhana, I have my sadhana. We come from different, but they can be actually quite similar in many ways. You're going towards the same goal, and that's more relevant than the label.
So there are many ways to reach the same goal, and there are many choices that exist. Until now, we are looking at, let's say, Hinduism or with one lens, if you like, with a borrowed lens of the West.
If we're trying to look at an indigenous Indian intellectual tradition from the principles, the theories and methods of understanding of a different intellectual tradition, you're immediately in trouble.
Yeah. And did you find, you having been born in a Catholic Christian household, and you were born as, and I'm going to try your name, Timothy Kiernan.
Very good. Well done.
I did it.
That's
Irish name.
Irish name.
To becoming Shaunaka Rishi Das. Tell me that journey from a Catholic Christian household to a Hindu who teaches Hinduism.
So, in one sense, I still belong to a Catholic household, in the sense that I have my family in Ireland and many, many cousins. Irish families, like Indian families, are extended, and you've cousin brothers all over the place and uncles. So I'm still part of that family. I also never left Christianity. I just developed in my spiritual journey, and the Christianity of my childhood was very relevant to how I was shaped and saw the world. Christianity is about love of God and love of your fellow man and acting with charity and kindness and compassion and tolerance. Well, I think Hindus they understand all those words. Compassion is karuna, tolerance is titikshava, humility is amanitva. They're all there, same words. So I had a foundation from Christianity, but what I found when I met Hindus at the age of 18, I met a Hare Krishna temple in Dublin, and I was looking for a way to practice my Christianity, and these were the people I found practicing it to the standard I had been reading in the Bible. A very personal experience, but it was where I ended up. And I found their practice to be very pure. You know, they were deadly serious about it. These were, because they were ashramites, you know, they were like very serious about their principles. So I was very attracted. I asked if I could practice there, and I was given permission. And to use the term Hindu, use the term Christian, I use them lightly. They don't really describe who I am in terms of, you know, well, using a little bit of Indian philosophy. The word for philosophy in Sanskrit is darshan, which is the way you see. Every individual sees differently. And that's how many religions there are and how many philosophies there are. So to call myself a Christian or a Hindu, you'd have to say one of so many billion. This is the way I see. So how I see Hinduism, I would admit, is my understanding of Hinduism. And everyone I meet is simply their understanding of Hinduism. And when we try and, in a sense, coerce others to practice as I practice, that doesn't work. Because they have to make their own choice. They have to see it and then practice it for themselves, because it comes from inside. And that's what I really liked about Hinduism, just that understanding, because that broadened things out, and that, to me, allowed love to happen. Because then I could give people a choice. I could present to them what I understood, but the choice was going to be theirs. And that's like in any worthy relationship. If I approach a girl and, you know, I can use all kinds of tricks to try and convince her that I'm, you know, to love me. And, you know, I brush my hair in this way and wear this cologne. And so, you know, and of course women use the same tricks, even better. And we use all these tricks to entice each other and convince that I'm a worthy subject of affection. But push comes to shove, I have to allow that person to make their own choice. Otherwise, it's not love. It's how I want them to think I am, rather than here's who I am. Can we have a relationship on that basis?
The question of choice, and that's where I think, if you say Gita, Krishna says, has a dialogue to make Arjuna understand the perspective, but the choice is his still to fight or not.
At the very, very end of the Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, deliberate on what I have said fully, then do what you wish to do. And the word is icha, do as you desire. That's very profound, because then it's not dogma.
Yeah.
He's not telling him what to do. And that's a relationship. So a love is allowed to happen. And that's kind of showing how Indian spirituality works. It's not a set of rules and regulations, simply. There are rules and regulations that, shall we say, keep us off the streets, you know, keep us together. But ultimately, we all have to make our choice. And our choice has to be one of relationship and affection, and it has to be real. And the fact that Krishna, in this context, God, has a conversation with Arjuna. He doesn't tell him what to do. He has a conversation with him, gives him all kinds of options, and then says, now you choose. That's very instructive. That's what really attracted me, really helped me understand, okay, I can live with this.
So when with that 18-year-old boy, when he goes to the ashram, Hare Krishna ashram, and finds which Christian values were being practiced and you could embrace, number one, and you came from a background of, let's say, Abrahamic religions, where there is a good and a bad, and there is a judgment, there is a hell and a heaven, and there are rules one has to follow, and you now have a religion or a option of choice. So was anything not conflicting?
Well, you could say there were conflicts, yes. So in a sense, I was having an interreligious dialogue with myself. So as a Christian and then as a Hindu, taking different sides on different days. But that's just a healthy intellectual process. That's just learning how to think clearly, and giving myself choice by challenging myself. That's healthy for everyone, and that's the essence of Indian intellectual tradition and the heritage of the country. And I really think that needs to be reflected in the educational system. There are values within Indian intellectual heritage that are wonderful for the world, not just Indian educational system, but this is something we can export, from an Indian perspective. And I say we because, I'm a Gora, but who was I in my last life?
You never know.
I don't know.
So, but you were still born in a Catholic Christian household.
Yeah.
How did they deal? How did your parents, your siblings, how many brothers and sisters? 4. Deal with the fact that you wanted to become a Hindu, a practicing Hindu?
Well, my father died when I was 15. That was before all of this. But he knew that I'd been actively seeking a spiritual life since the age of 13. Now, It was years later that I understood that was an unusual thing. I thought that was normal. So he encouraged me on his deathbed to do that, which was very kind of him. For an Irish man in a small town in the 1970s, this was very broad-minded. And he encouraged me to search. He said that he, as a young child, had searched, or as a teenager, and he had become a stronger Catholic, but he said, you may not. So he gave me that license, a tremendous gift. And he said, whatever you do, find principles that really mean something to you, and follow them all of your life, and then you can respect yourself. And if you can respect yourself, other people can respect you. And that was maybe the best advice I ever got. And that has really helped. So I really felt I was blessed by him to really search and find my principles. Now you could say it's a very early age, but he had no options. This was his deathbed. My mother wasn't party to these conversations that I used to regularly have with my father about these things. So when, as a young 18-year-old boy, we're about as sensitive as a brick. I go off and just join an ashram, shave my head, wear saffron robes, have a little sikha.
It's a little chutiya.
Yeah, in Ireland in the 1970s, this is so radical. It's just incredibly radical. Now, it's even radical in India, what to speak of in a completely different culture where there's no context. My mother didn't know what a Hindu was. There were hardly any Indians in Ireland. There were hardly any coloured people of any race in Ireland at that time. So when I came home and I had a shaven head, she thought I'd joined a punk rock band, which was the norm of the day. I mean, that's the only reason why you would do that to your hair. So it was a difficult conversation, shall we say. So it took about 2 years for us to sort this out. I just thought, well, this is what I'm doing. And she has to understand that because I was a boy and I didn't get it. And that, she's my mother. Of course she's concerned. She's in anxiety. I didn't see any of it. But it took me a few years. I kind of you grow up. And I had a conversation with her and we sorted something out. And actually it became a real relationship and became a strong relationship. With my siblings, 2 of my siblings also in some way became Hindus. And another one became a vegetarian. So we all talked about these things, and we shared many perspectives.
No, I want to know that moment of tussle between your mom and you. What were her worries? What were you saying to her? And then how did you get her around? What calmed her down? That
Well-
moment, the anecdote.
Yeah, so what calmed her down really was I realized there was difficulty when I came home one time and I wasn't allowed to talk to the younger children, my brother and sister. My older brother, she had no control over them, you know. But I realized, oh, this is serious now. You know, this like, you know. So I sat her down and I said, look, I've chosen to do this, and it's in a search for truth, and this is where I find truth now. So more than likely, even though at the time I was a brahmachari, but that's only a celibate student, but I said more than likely I'll get married, and I'll marry someone in this tradition, and we'll have children, and I want you to be their grandmother. So we have to sort this out. And that conversation helped her because she realized that was me. And then I said to her, I said, look, if I find truth somewhere else, then I'll go there. But this is my trajectory. She really understood then that I wasn't brainwashed. I wasn't a member of a cult. No one was pressurizing me to do this. She just hadn't seen my journey. She just saw 1 minute to the next, he's done this. So she's thinking something extreme happened because for her it was extreme. So I just helped her understand that wasn't the case. So that's how we
I thought it was just the mother's love.
No, it was, and see,
Gave acceptance.
As a young boy, I had no idea of that.
Yes.
Because as a youngster, you don't, unless you're of a certain age or you have children yourself, you don't know what that is.
Yes. It was just love, sheer love.
Oh,
she didn't want to lose you.
No, total anxiety. You know, I mean, where is he? What's he happening? And can I talk to him? And if he talks to the others, will they become like that? Oh, you can't talk. You know, that's real anxiety. And it was kind of breaking the family, but it was all misunderstanding and miscommunication. And I realized I was very much part of the miscommunication. You know, so I had to grow up a little bit.
So you had to. How? But when your brothers and all took to being, what path of Hinduism do you think? And how was she still there? Was she still?
She didn't mind. She didn't mind with them. It wasn't because they didn't take to it wholeheartedly like I did. Yeah, they didn't join an ashram or, you know, it wasn't a big deal. So they were just continuing on doing their thing.
Yeah, and she was fine with that.
Yeah.
It's often also how a mother, if their child, they're growing in a certain tradition and the child doesn't follow her, it just feels, have I done something wrong?
Of course.
In bringing him up.
Of course. And she was a very pious Christian.
Yes.
You know, she was very dedicated, as my father was. So, and that's something which I've come to respect more and more as the years have gone by, how she brought us up, you know, to really appreciate spirituality and to take it seriously in life, that it's not kind of an optional extra, it's an intrinsic part of people, and you have to nurture that side of you.
I want to get to that moment where you felt, this is for me.
From a very early age, there was something in me said that that's the thing to do.
What were you seeking?
It's difficult to say. The two words that always come to mind are truth, and the better word that I found in Sanskrit in later years was sat, which is reality. Now it's often translated as truth with a capital T, which makes it religious, but really the translation is reality. What's real and what's not real. And I was looking for what's real, what's dependable, what's sustainable. And the other one that was maybe the more important one was love. And that's,
why were you seeking it?
Because that's a message that was central to Christianity. When Christ spoke, that's what he spoke about. That's what inspired people. And that's what inspired me. And I was looking for who loves. Everyone talks about it. Every book we read, every piece of music we hear, every film we see. But who actually practices it consistently?
What in Hinduism you felt was closer to the Sat and the truth that you were looking for?
I was very interested in how truth was approached, this broad-minded approach of the fact that everyone is an individual on this path. That was very attractive. The idea of Atma, the idea that we are spiritual beings in a material context. that was very, very attractive, a very important foundation for love for me. And I found it philosophically as a very good foundation for Christianity. But what surprised me was there were Indian traditions of bhakti, of loving service, that were older than Christianity. I thought this was a exclusively Christian message, just to find out it's universal. And of course, when you think about it, of course love is universal. And the idea of love of God being universal, that was revelation. So you had this idea of bhakti, the idea of atma, so there's theology and philosophy working together. That was unique. I hadn't found anything like that. So there's a philosophical basis, a thought-based basis, so that it means you can question everything. Now, of course, in the Christianity I was brought up in, there were a lot of mysteries that you didn't question, or they didn't have answers for, or you're not supposed to question God. You get these kind of answers from people who haven't studied it. There are others who have, and they're open to a discussion, but I didn't meet those people. But in India, in Hindu heritage, Buddhist heritage as well, and Jain heritage, you're meant to question, because all the traditions have a philosophical basis. They're all expecting you to question the guru, question the scripture. And if you're not questioning, well, you're not engaging your intelligence. So you're not bringing everything to the table. So it's not serious. Then it'll just be sentimental, kind of superstitious. It'll just be about feelings. So that's important, but only when combined with this use of intelligence. I found that combination very encouraging. And it allowed me to go very deeply into these traditions. So I could explore God from a philosophical point of view. You're nearly not allowed to do that in the Western context.
Or an Abrahamic context.
Or in an Abrahamic context. Now, having said that, there are always exceptions. So Avicenna, hundreds of years ago, the Muslim philosopher from the Middle East, he was a very interesting philosopher, working from Greek philosophy. And then, so Islam for hundreds of years was the storehouse of philosophical thought in the West. So you have these periods where people really, you get some brilliant philosophers coming out of traditions. But for me, as just a Wexford boy, just a kid, I wasn't finding that engagement. But what I found in India, I think, superseded everything that I read later. I didn't stop reading Christianity or Islam or Buddhism in Hinduism because I wanted to see what is everyone saying. It's okay to fix yourself in one tradition. That's fine. But personally, I was interested.
Questioning mind. You're a very curious man.
Curious, yeah.
Huh? So that's curiosity brought you to ashram. And then how long did you stay? What happened after that?
I stayed 12 or 13 years in the ashram, and then I moved out. During that time in the ashram, I got involved in interreligious dialogue. I started to go out and meet people from other religions and talk to them, and that was very interesting and very helpful for me in terms of my self-development. And I've continued that ever since. I have wonderful relationships with people from all kinds of faiths. And after that, we moved out of the ashram. We wanted to start a family, but it never happened.
You married someone from the ashram?
I did.
Or it was an arranged marriage?
It was an arranged marriage, yes, yeah.
You didn't, I mean, that was quite conflicting to the Western society.
Well, no,
I mean,
not to Irish society.
Okay.
My parents' marriage was also arranged. So
your parents' marriage, and who arranged your marriage?
We're just friends in the ashram.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, other arrangements had been made, but I said no to them.
Achha.
And I just said yes to this one. It was just time. And she said yes as well, so it worked out. I think using the Mahabharata and the Ramayana as examples of that is a bit difficult, because among the Kshatriyas, people could get married for a couple of days and then leave each other. We don't look at, I mean, there are many different types of marriage in Indian Shastra. So we alight on one or two types that are considered respectable. So they're not all considered respectable, but they're all presented, which I find very interesting.
When you were married, and then I know you ended up coming here and opening the center eventually. What scriptures by that time had you studied? And in terms of education qualification, what did you have?
Well, education qualification, I left secondary school, and that was it. Then I joined the ashram. So I never went to university. So I don't have any educational qualifications.
And you're teaching in the university, running a full center.
It's proof that there is a God. Sometimes that's how it happens.
It's fascinating, I think, for children today getting really upset by the fact that I can't, or some children getting upset about the fact that I can't apply to Oxford or Cambridge because I don't have 9 A's. Quickly before we go into Hinduism, what would you like to say to them about education today?
Well, I mean, education is very important. I spend so much of my time encouraging people to go into education, go into universities, at something that I never did. But at the same time, I've turned out okay. And so have so many other people. So in one sense, if I had gone to university, would I have even started this? Would I have seen so many barriers? Because all the scholars, I knew a lot of scholars in the UK before I started this, and I consulted with them before we threw ourselves into this, but all of them said it wasn't going to happen. Oxford would never get involved in anything like this. Hindu studies is kind of an obscure subject. Oxford had no strategy for Hindu studies. And I did it anyway. And they did it from a perspective of knowledge. They know how universities work, and they knew how Oxford worked, a big dinosaur, 850 years old. I mean, the most prestigious university in the world. Some guy comes out of nowhere with no qualification whatsoever. But the thing is, I was invited to help develop this by people in the university at a very high level, and it happened at a certain time with certain people, and it wouldn't happen today, I don't think.
What were they seeking? I mean, why Hindu studies?
Well, it was one professor, Keith Ward, Regis Professor of Divinity, who wanted to develop world religious studies in the theology faculty. And he didn't have anyone to teach Hinduism, so he approached me and I helped organize something. And then he said, now you have to do that every year. And that's kind of how the center started. So it started a little bit by osmosis. But I saw the opportunity. I saw that, Hinduism has no place in the academy. It has no voice in intellectual circles. So unless it learns how to study itself and present itself, make itself accessible at that level, it'll never be taken seriously. It'll always be some backwater, superstitious, mythological thing. But it has too much more to offer than that. So, and the thing is, out of India has come yoga, has come mindfulness, and so many other things that are considered very valuable in the world. Everyone does yoga, everyone does mindfulness. But there's so many other things they could do from India. They could even understand what yoga is, which no one seems to understand. So the Indian intellectual traditions have an awful lot to offer, and the spiritual traditions, but no one has access to them, not even in India. So this was really necessary. So I could get into it, even though I had no academic qualification, but the need was too great. Someone had to do it. But
you had read a lot.
I had read a lot. It was my interest.
So what all did you read to arrive here? As in what?
By that stage, I had read the Bhagavad Purana, which is, without doubt, the most influential text in Indian culture, and nobody really knows that. Everyone thinks it's the Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. I'd read those as well. I'd read some of the Upanishads and other books. So I'd read around.
So I'll get to that question later on, to what people can read to understand Hinduism. But what is Hinduism?
Well, I suppose if I could answer that succinctly, I'd be a billionaire. No one's ever been able to answer the question, because Hinduism doesn't exist.
Right.
It's a term that was invented in the 19th century by the Raj to try and classify people from a census point of view. So from the census it made sense, otherwise it's senseless. It doesn't make any sense because there's no ism. There's no one way of looking at the traditions that make up what we call Hinduism. Hindu itself is a foreign term. It doesn't make any sense either. So it's difficult, but Hindu has become in the last 100 years the accepted norm by the traditions themselves.
So what am I?
So we talk about Hinduism because that's the word that everyone uses. We talk about Hindu because that's the word that everyone uses. But Hindu describes many, many traditions, many sampradayas, many sanstas, many mats, many different temple communities, religious communities, philosophical communities, aesthetic communities, forms of art, music, poetry, dance, architecture, economics, politics. It's embedded all over the place. It's a civilization, and it's not described as that, all encompassing. And people say, oh, it's a way of life. That's a very small answer.
Really?
It reduces Hinduism. It's much more than a way of life. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of being. It's a way of eating. It's a way of dancing. It's a way of chanting. It's a way of singing. It's a way of poetic expression. It's a way of doing politics. It's a way of developing foreign policy. It's a way of understanding economics, investment strategies. How do you invest dharmically? How do you invest in a way that isn't just about you, it's about others? And are there strategies that you can use for that? That's dharmic thinking. And dharma is not sectarian, it's not even religious necessarily in the religious sense of talking about God. You don't have to be a theist to be dharmic. You're expected to be dharmic anyway. If you live on this planet, then you should act as a member of the planet. And what kind of a member? Well, a very small member. There's billions of humans. There are billions upon trillions of other living entities. And from the point of view of Atma, then we're all spiritually equal, even though our bodies are different. So we treat each other with certain levels of equality and equity. So I say equity because I can't treat a snake equally, because a snake doesn't understand that it shouldn't bite me. So I have to keep a distance, and that's how I treat it properly. So Hinduism talks about these things, but no one is taking the lessons. So many young people all over the planet, they're engrossed in environmentalism. They're very concerned about it. And the religions of the world have a lot to say about this, and everyone's just looking to science. All science can say is, doom, doom, it's all going to end, we have to do something now. But the religions of the world, and I think particularly the Indian religions, all their discussion is about the environment, is in the environment. Krishna is in Vrindavan. They're worshipping the hill of Govardhan. It's all about the cows and the pasture. Ram is in the forest. Everything is happening in that setting. And there's so much discussion about what kind of trees are growing and what kind of food people are eating in all the texts. The Upanishads are about sitting under a tree and thinking. It's all connected with the environment. You see Lord Ram, so what does he do? He comes as an avatar, so this is God come to earth. How does he engage with the earth he comes to? There aren't very many humans involved in his story, only at the beginning and the end. In the middle, he needs an army to counteract Ravana, who's not a human, he's a Rakshasa. And who's his army? Monkeys, bears, vultures, squirrels, fish. He's engaging with the whole world, and he's accepting service from every form of life, not just human life. That's very instructive.
So are we saying that there is this one, let's call it Hinduism otherwise what would you call it?
No, we'll call it Hinduism. It's the word we use.
Yes.
Ill-definable word.
So at one level it exists at the form of philosophy that questions everything, gives you a choice, asks you to not accept but ask questions and seek. On the other hand, you have this whole concept of God, and they say there are 86 lakh god and goddesses and the whole world gets confused. How do you marry these two? What is it?
There's no need to be confused if you're thinking from the perspective of Hindu literature or even Indian literature. If you think that religion is an Abrahamic basis, then it's very confusing. Because the Abrahamic basis is there's one God, therefore when you go to India there are many gods. But in India, people don't see it as many gods. They see one God manifest in many different ways. That's a very different way of seeing. So there's one God, there's a oneness about this. And the two big schools are the school of that oneness is Brahman, the spirit, or Bhagavan, the person God. And the person God includes Brahman. And for many Brahmavadis, that includes the person. So it's very broad-minded. And there are how many manifestations of God? Well, God is by definition unlimited, so who can limit his manifestations? God manifests as Narasingha, half man, half lion, Vraha, a boar, Matsya, a fish, Krishna, a little boy, Rama, the king. He manifests in all Mohini Murti as a woman. God manifests in many different ways. Shiva, I mean, wow, he lives in a graveyard, for goodness sake. So you think about all the purificatory processes, all the ritual, you have to be so pure. He lives in a graveyard. How impure can you get? Yet everyone worships him. So it's so contradictory, you could say, but God allows himself to be approached by anyone. So who approaches Shiva? All the people who can't be accommodated everywhere else.
So, but again, atheism is quite on the rise. A lot of the world are attracted towards it. And they'll say, is there a need for a God? And how can there be a God when there is so much evil? My daughter actually finds it very hard to accept God, the existence of it, when there is so much of evil in the world. How can God allow for so much evil and so much of sadness, misery to exist?
Once we're talking like that, we're talking Christian theology. So she is a Christian theologian. And I understand that she's influenced by the West and the media that pervades, and Hollywood, and that's what's fed to her. But from a Hindu perspective, the idea of evil isn't really relevant. The issue is avidya, ignorance. We're ignorant, which means we're eminently redeemable. But while we're ignorant, we're really ignorant, and we do ignorant things, and we do violent things, and we do vile things to each other. But as we develop ourselves, our consciousness, by feeding ourselves with knowledge, by associating with people who have knowledge and practice this, and by that practice they develop their virtues and their principles, and they become better people, well then you realize I can become a better person. It's just based on my choices, and that's based on knowledge. So once we start to develop like that, then it's not a simple thing as evil, because you realize my choices are what create what I call evil. These bad choices mean I do bad things. People may classify it as evil or ignorance, however you classify it, but it's my choices that make that. It's got nothing to do with God. I have free will. I have these choices that I make. My desire pushes me, and I do crazy stuff. Why do you blame God for that? God gave you the choice. You make the choice, and then you blame him for what? Giving you the choice that you demanded in the first place? That doesn't make any sense. So a spiritually minded person understands, I have my choices, I take full responsibility. Whatever karma, good, bad, I made that.
Another point that an atheist would have, what is the evidence that there's God?
There's no empiric evidence that there's God. I've heard wonderful rational explanations, but it's not definitive. And there's no definitive evidence that there isn't a God. And the reason is because God, by definition, is supra-rational, is beyond rational thought. So by trying to understand and define God by rational processes, well, that doesn't work. Scientifically, that doesn't make sense. Scientifically, if you can't disprove God and you can't prove a negative, then you have to keep the idea on the table. So to say you're an atheist, to say you believe there is no God, is simply a belief. It's simply a faith. So you've effectively started a religion. Your religion is that there is no God, because there's no evidence for it. Now, if I say that there is a God based on my personal experience, based on I feel I have a personal relationship, then is that belief or is that knowledge? Is that experience? And that relationship is not a rational thing. It's a super rational thing. So I kind of don't have to give evidence. I don't need evidence for myself. And I'm not going to give evidence to you because you're expecting a rational explanation for something that doesn't need a rational explanation. It's irrelevant to have a rational explanation. So by simply restricting ourselves to scientific, empiric processes, we are restricting ourselves to a material context. And we're not allowing ourselves to go beyond that context. And I think we shouldn't be prejudiced, because that's not science. Science means that we're open. We're always open to be more broad-minded and to explore something for what it is and on its own terms. That's intelligent. So I think the idea of God, to be skeptical about God, is perfectly understandable. To be agnostic about God is perfectly understandable. In fact, that's where the Vedas starts. The Rig Veda, the Nasadiya Sutta, is a wonderful kind of dialogue. People, sages, talking about how do we understand what's real, Sat, and then saying, well, maybe the Devas know what's real. No, the Devas, they were born in time, they end in time, so maybe they wouldn't really understand it. Or maybe Lord Shiva does, because he's just extraordinary. He said, yes, but he was also born of Brahma, so maybe not. Or maybe he understands, and they mean Brahman, the spiritual. And then they say, or maybe he doesn't. And that's the last line. And it's left as an intellectual.
So there is a space for atheist it's acceptable, it's inclusive.
It's not atheism. It's inquiry. So they leave it hanging because intellectually that's all you can do. So they open it up for inquiry. We may interpret, they're shutting it down. They're not. They're doing quite the opposite. They're opening it up for inquiry and say, intellectually, this is as far as we can go. But that doesn't mean that's the end of the inquiry. Because the Vedas and then the Upanishads go on to develop that further. And the Puranas go on and develop that further. So there's a huge body of literature that has developed from this slightly agnostic perspective. So intellectually, that's very sound, and that is the best starting point. The starting point is, I don't know. That's where you can begin to learn, by admitting I don't know, but with an open mind. Now when we say, I don't know, but there's no evidence, therefore not, then you're saying unless it is evidence-based in a material context, it doesn't exist. There's no proof that theory is workable.
A long discussion, really.
Long discussion. That's why in Hindu thought, the idea of being an atheist is considered to be deficient. It's a poor fund of knowledge. If you claim that there is no God, you're making a truth claim that you can't verify. Therefore, it's a religious claim. It's purely faith-based. And faith, everybody has faith. Whether it's in God or in money or in cigarettes or in women or in cats, whatever it is. Everyone has faith. Faith, Shraddha, there are 15 words in Sanskrit for faith, looking at it from different perspectives. So very interesting discussion. But Shraddha, one of the ones used most commonly, means where you place your heart. And everyone has somewhere where they place their heart that gets them out of bed in the morning, where you wake up and you don't get out of bed unless you think there's a possibility of being happy that day.
So our original question of can faith exist without religion?
Absolutely, it does. Everyone practices it every day. And it's essential for our psychological, emotional, intellectual growth and our spiritual growth. It's just very sad when people just disconnect the spiritual. They just disregard one part of the whole package. The package is who we are, the whole package. And if I look at the body's going to last 70, 80 years, and then it's gone. But in Hindu thought, the mind lasts a lot longer. It can go from body to body, and the emotions go with that. And the intellect does the same. And then there's the Atma. The Atma lasts, it's eternal by nature. So there's two energies going on here. One is eternal, one is temporary. Which should I give my energy to? Well, I have to give my energy to my body. It's a machine. I feed it, I water it, I oil it, I do what I have to do. And it runs out after a while. My mind, intellect, the same. My mind changes every 5 minutes. I'm happy and, oh, no, I'm sad. It's just constantly on the go. The intellect change. Every book I read feeds me, makes me think differently. But my spiritual aspect is essentially who I am, because that's forever. And if we say there's no evidence of a spiritual aspect, there's no evidence to the contrary. But the one question is, describe life, the energy of life. No doctor in any hospital has ever been able to define life, the very essence of who we are. We have no idea what it is. We don't know how it starts. We don't know how it ends.
Basically, we don't have evidence, and so we
don't have information. There's no information.
No information. Okay,
so to disregard life energy, the essence of Atma, that's how it's defined in the scripture, and not explore it in any way that we can. And so these texts say, well, you can explore it without material means. You can go inside yourself by meditation and yoga and different practices. If we haven't practiced those things to see if the experiment works, we're not scientists.
Religion versus spirituality.
I don't think there's a conflict between religion and spirituality. I think it's a question of development. So when someone first starts to think outside the material box, shall we say, or has an experience of some kind, then they get a little enthusiastic and they find some sadhana, some practice, some rules and regulations, and that they get some experience from that makes them. So then they feel these rules, these regulations, this practice, this guru, this temple, this mosque, this synagogue, this church, this is the only way. Because we don't have a lot of knowledge or a lot of experience, but we're quite convinced because we've had an experience, and it's jolly. And then we go to another person, we try and convince them, you have to accept these rules, this regulation, this church, this synagogue, this whatever it is. And that's totally understandable. That's called, in the Bhagavad Purana, Kanishta Adhikar. It's neophyte, it's just beginning. Most people involved in religion are at that level. They're involved in religion for birth, marriage, and death. They go to a temple, a priest, for some samskars. And that's their involvement. So, but when you develop as a person and you get into it, then you begin to realize it's really about relationship. It's about relationship with God, with the devotees of God, with people who have some understanding but no interest, and people who really reject. And you see, and this is, I'm just quoting the Bhagavad Purana, so a very interesting discussion on stages of development of faith. And with that, I'm looking at the idea of God. God is multifarious, manifest in many different ways. I'm looking at the devotees of God. Well, in my temple, I'll have people who are Kanishtas, and I don't identify with them anymore. And I meet this Christian guy who in his church has Kanishtas and doesn't identify with them anymore. He's more interested in his relationship with God than the church. And I'm more interested in my relationship with God than the temple or the institution. And that's what I think is the beginning of what we call spirituality. So it's a much broader vision. So I find more in common with the person of another faith and their practice than I do with the people, and not everyone, but some people in my own tradition. And a lot of people have that experience. And I think that kind of spirituality means it's not either or. The religion is very important for bringing people together to think about themselves in a completely different way, in a much deeper way, to help them understand why they should be loving and compassionate and kind and humble, and what these things mean in a social context, a political context. We look at the political reality that we live in at the moment, and these values are being taken out of politics very consciously.
But the religion is what is dividing as well. So that's where it all comes, that you can be spiritual, or why you need to be religious.
If we become sectarian and say that this is the only way to understand religion, so that's very small-minded, and it's just sad to see. If at that level we're so kind of ignorant, and someone can come to us and say, then what we should do is we should attack these people, or we should bomb these people, take a bomb and go and do it. We're vulnerable to that kind of persuasion if we have a poor fund of knowledge. So it's really...
So lack of knowledge and ignorance. Okay, what are the pillars on which Hinduism stands?
I'll say it very simply, just 6 principles from the Gita. And the Gita isn't everyone's scripture, so I'm only presenting one aspect of Hinduism. I could also give 6 principles from the Bhagavad Purana or from the Upanishads. So we can look at it anyway, but Samadarshana, equal vision, based on the idea of Atma, that you see all living beings equally. So it's not speciesist, it's not racist. The speciesist means it's not just about humans, it's about all living beings are to be treated equally. And it's not racist, it's not gender specific, all these things. The idea of Icha, the idea of choice, intellectually, that everyone has to be given choice, never coerced. The idea of ahimsa. Ahimsa is, without doubt, if you read the full Mahabharata, it's the basic principle behind all dharma, not to harm others. That's acharya, which is teaching by example. And I think that's the basis, the constitutional basis of politics and of education. Amanitva, humility. Without humility, we never find our place. We never find our real identity. There's a dishonesty. And priti, love. And I think these principles can be found in practically every branch or aspect of Hinduism. I think they're very fundamental, but they carry a lot of import. I've been able to apply them in many different cultural contexts. I've taught them to Dutch business executives who have no idea about Indian anything. I've taught them to YPO people in Mumbai. I've taught them to people in America. So they're universal.
And that brings me to the next question of how is all these philosophy of Hinduism relevant today for today's children growing now in this from X to Z generation?
I really think if young people had access to this knowledge, if they had some basic educational, able to get some courses, etc., that were actually non-sectarian, actually intellectually based, and that's the difficulty because of how things have developed. They'll see that Hinduism is very relevant in terms of the environment. In terms of environmental theory, we just mentioned about equal vision, non-speciesist. So if that principle is applied to the law, so the law of India is borrowed from the European Enlightenment. It's about the concept of human dignity. But in India, it could be about the dignity of all life. If people lobbied for that, that means that legally you could stop the encroachment on the homes of the elephants and the tigers and the crocodiles, all the endangered species. They become citizens of the state. So, and to have your legal system based on that is revolutionary for environment. That would transform the world if it became the basis of law. And the possibilities there philosophically. The idea of sexual identity, of people being gay or trans, this is a big thing that has developed over the last couple of decades. And in India, you look at the deities where God is a man, God is a woman, God is in Shiva and Parvati, half man and half woman in one form.
Ardhanarishwar.
Yeah. And then you have the story of Harihara, Vishnu and Shiva getting together and having a child, both males. I mean, the deities, God himself or herself, is being very fluid about sexual identity, not taking it at all seriously, kind of making a statement that this isn't a serious concern. Yet, why are we taking it so seriously? In Indian culture, there's always been a place for the Hiraj community. Since the time of Ramachandra, going from Ayodhya to the river with all the people of Ayodhya coming, then he said, stop, you can't cross the river. I go alone. I go just with my wife and my brother. And then these gay people, these trans people said, we're going to stay here till you come back. And they stayed there for 14 years, and he came back and he met them, and he was so, his heart melted so much that they were still there. He gave them the blessings that no religious ceremony can take place without you being there and giving a blessing. So he elevated that. I mean, that's clear in the scripture. No one quotes this. It's not an issue. So it's there. All these interpretations are there to be seen. Shikandi on the battlefield, changing on the battlefield from man to woman, It's just
Just transgender.
this fluidity is in the tradition, yet somehow the tradition has forgotten it and has become very Victorian because of the laws passed in the 18th century, in the 19th century by the Raj. And those laws haven't been critically analysed from within the tradition, but the tradition hasn't a voice. It hasn't intellectually developed itself so that it can question the basis of law in India from its own heritage. They're just two examples. Black Lives Matter again. What's the issue of race when you have the idea of Atma?
Right.
So these issues can be discussed very intelligently from within the tradition. It's just that people have forgotten.
So it's
So the discussion is happening based on a Western discussion coming into India and people trying to appropriate a Western discussion in an Indian cultural context. And it's not going to work.
we are looking at the Indian tradition from a Western lens.
Yes. There's a book on the shelf over there by a lady called Chandravali, who's a 15th century Bengali writer. And she's rewriting the Ramayana from a feminist perspective. This is 15th century India. This is not the feminism of India today, which is influenced by the Western feminism movement. This is Indian feminism. So who's investigating this? Who's learning Bengali, classical Bengali, so that they can read the text? Who's learning Sanskrit so they can read the text? That's where the problem arises.
Lack of having the knowledge.
It's lack of education, lack of knowledge, lack of concern about the culture, lack of consciousness that there's anything in the culture that's worthwhile. So we're doing this study here in Oxford showing that this is very worthwhile. These traditions are very important from a global perspective because things aren't global unless the world takes the Indian perspective seriously. If they don't take the Indian perspective seriously, then it's not global. It's just you adopt to our way of thinking. But the unfortunate thing is that India hasn't taken the Indian way of thinking seriously. Now, the education system in India in the last couple of years is trying to remedy that, and we're trying to help them to do
But
that.
then when this kind of bringing the Hindu or the Indian tradition into the books in classes, then it is seen as Hinduizing everything, or Bhagwa Karan of the
And in some cases it is
saffronizing
that. At
everything.
some cases it is that. And that's just very unfortunate. So because this process has only started, it looks very clunky. It looks a little like a teenager trying to assert themselves. They suddenly realize, I am this identity, and then you start to assert yourself all over the place and it just comes out wrong. Or you realize that, so you become sullen and silent. So India is going through this growing up period in a global context. That's we are part of the world. So it's claiming we are the world's biggest democracy and India has always been a democracy. Well, no, it hasn't always been a democracy. Forget democracy. It's essentially a Greek idea. Fine. We're a world nuclear power. Yes, but that's not an Indian thing. We're economically, we're this and that. Well, you're playing the markets. That's not an Indian thing either.
What is an Indian thing then?
That's the question, and that's for India to find out. And we're saying that there's enough in Indian culture that can revolutionize how the world thinks and how it thinks about all these things, how it thinks about nuclear power and its ramifications for war and peace. These are issues that have to be dealt with much more subtly, much more deeply. So it's not about playing politics, it's about questioning politics. It's about discussing what values and principles a leader has to have. And that question is the basic question of the Ramayana. That's the question that Valmiki is answering in the Ramayana. That's what Ram's story is all about, how to lead, what a leader actually looks like, what character they need to have, what values, how much they have to sacrifice. And what did he sacrifice? He sacrificed everything. He sacrificed Sita. And people go, no, you can't do that. You can't sacrifice. He went, that's a real leader. Where are we going to get one of them? Well, 50% will do.
But then similarly, it came to Treta Yuga and to the Dwapar Yuga where Krishna came, and he changed the whole thing of how you look at it. So it evolved.
It's another way of looking at it. He didn't change. It's not either or, as I said. It's both and. I love the story of Lord Ramachandra. I love his example. I'm totally inspired by him. I love Krishna and his love. The fact that this little child can just introduce so much love to the world.
And yet lie his way around.
Because he's a kid. Also, he's God, so he can do whatever he likes. And it's all
but then
perfect.
Aham Brahmasmi, I have God in me.
You have God in you, but are you God? That's a basic philosophical question. Some people in India say yes, some people in India say no. As it remains open. But the fact is, I know, certainly in this manifestation, Krishna is standing there as Makanchor, having stolen the butter, eating it with a little smile on his face, looking out at me from the picture. And he gets away with it. I don't. When the gopis find him with the butter, they take him by the hand to his mother. They're all annoyed because they've spent the whole morning churning this butter and he's destroyed everything. And as they're looking down on him, they're falling in love with him all over again. And by the time they've come to Yashoda's door, they're just totally in love with him and they don't have anything to say. But Yashoda opens the door and he's there covered in butter, so she knows what's going on. She's so embarrassed and she looks at him and she falls in love with him again. That never happened to me. When I got caught, I got chastised. And that's the distinction.
That's the distinction.
He's God.
I got it.
Yeah. And I'm just envious. I'm not loving. I'm annoyed.
Yeah, I know. So when Krishna says he's going to come back and he never comes back, Radha is not angry at him.
No. Every time she thinks she's lost.
Yashoda is not angry that Krishna never came back.
They're lost in love because Krishna is different than you or I. He's full of love.
Yeah.
And no one feels at any point that he doesn't love them.
Yes, it's not.
Our difficulty is we say I love you to someone and then the next morning we have to hear them say it again because overnight we think they don't love us. It's never like that with Krishna. See, and with Ram, there's never a situation where he's not following Dharma. So these manifestations, these avatars are so special in their example.
Yes, it's all manifestation of...
That we will find the perfection in our relationship with God. Find an Ishtadev, find a form of God that inspires us, and then start developing our relationship, and we will find that love.
So the God, if I can just ground it up and say, God is one, the manifestations are many, and one can follow one or many manifestations. It doesn't matter, but whatever inspires you.
Whatever inspires, if you find, it's always recommended to find an Ishtadev, to find a Lord of your heart, the Lord that makes more sense to you, and dedicate yourself to develop a sadhana that others who follow that Lord follow.
And what does that achieve?
We develop a relationship with that form of God. We're developing a relationship with God.
But why can't I have Krishna and I like some aspect from Shiva and some aspect of Ram and some aspect of...
That's very nice. But how would your husband feel if you like a little bit of that man and a little bit of that man and a little bit of that man?
It's not my husband, it's my God.
Yeah, so exactly. So God also wants a relationship with you. He wants you to focus. Or she wants you to focus, however you approach. So there needs to be a focus to get a result. No Olympian starts by doing running and ends up doing swimming. No, you choose one.
Yeah, but that means you're saying that I have to appease him.
No, it's not appease. It's learn how to love. There's no question of appeasing. In one sense, God is appeasing us. We're like wayward children running around like headless chickens. I want this, I want this, I want this. Give me this, give me this, give me satisfaction now. I want everything now. Give me that iPad, give me those shoes. And there's no end to it. We go to God and say, give us a BMW. We don't say to him, we're going to pay for it. Who do you go to and say, give me a BMW and not have to pay for it? We expect God. He's like our parent. He's just an order supplier in the sky. That's not a relationship that's worth having. If someone constantly approaches you like that, you get fed up with them after a while.
But whoever I follow, let's say even if I follow one, I'm still reaching the one whole.
Yes, and as I say, I celebrate Ram Navami for Lord Ram. I celebrate Shivratri for Shiva. I have great affection for these deities, but my Ishtadev is Krishna. So my sadhana in the morning is Krishna. My focus, the one I'm developing my primary relationship with is Krishna, because there's a sadhana attached to it.
Why Krishna for you?
Krishna, all the other manifestations of God in every religion I've come across, and even in Hinduism, they all have a purpose to serve. Krishna has no purpose to serve. Krishna is just God being God. He's doing whatever the hell he likes. And he doesn't care. He's a kid. He's only about love. Everything he does is about love. And that to me means everything, because that's what life is about.
But then everything is fair in love and war.
No, that's just some Machiavellian stuff you came up with.
Okay.
Krishna doesn't act like that. He says to Arjuna, I protect my devotee in every circumstance, to the extent that on the battlefield he even broke his own promise. So therefore he says to Arjuna, he says, you declare it that my devotee never perishes. Because people mightn't take him seriously, because he'll do anything for his devotee.
For a lot of people who do Krishna, and I know it's getting long, he constantly in Gita says, follow me. It's me. It's me. It's just me.
For Arjuna, yeah.
But then it is just, unless you are...
He also 7 times says, this is my opinion. And at the end says, you choose. Because it's about love. Arjuna has to make his personal choice. So he's saying, I'm God, Arjuna. He doesn't mention God in the first 6 chapters. He mentions that he's God twice in an obscure kind of a way. Okay. It's only in the middle 6 chapters that he really gets into this, and concretely at the very end.
Hindu philosophy, religion, call it what you may, has so many scriptures. It starts with the Vedas, Puranas, Upanishad, the Gita. Why is Gita the representative text when you yourself are saying that Bhagavad Puran is the one that actually holds all the values?
That's the one that scholars say, Indian scholars say, is the most influential. And I see that influence everywhere. But we always say the Bhagavad Gita because the Bhagavad Puran is 14,500 verses. The Bhagavad Gita is 700. So that's one reason why we say
for brevity and for quick.
And also, for brevity. And also because when people who aren't Hindus come and say, what's your Bible? Everyone's thinking book, and they say Bhagavad Gita because it's a coherent book. It's not a book, it's a chapter of the Mahabharata, which is 120,000 verses long. So it's not a good answer anyway. So a lot of people say the Bhagavad Gita. It is a very influential book. It's one of the 3 books that an Acharya has to write a commentary on. So it's a very, very important book. The Upanishads are very important. The Vedanta Sutra is very important. These are important books in the tradition. If I see someone adhering to the Upanishads, the Puranas, the Mahabharata, as long as they're focused, I think that's great.
If someone wants to understand the crux of Hinduism and wants to know about it, what are the 1, 2 or 3 or just one book they need to epic or
it's really not a book.
Scripture.
It's Sangha. The scriptures always say it starts with Sangha. It starts with association. You find someone who is spiritually oriented, or a group of people who are spiritually oriented, and you start to associate with them, and you begin to think differently. You begin to become inspired, enthusiastic. Then you find scripture. Then you find sadhana. That all comes secondary. the essence in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism actually is Sangha. That's the most powerful thing.
Sangha, and then what? Which scriptures would you say they should
Then
go turn to?
scriptures. Then you study. Then once you find your Sangha...
But which ones do they turn to?
Which scripture? It depends on the Sangha you find. If you find a Vaishnav Sangha, it'll be the Vishnu scriptures. If you find a Shaivite Sangha, it'll be Shaivite scripures. If you're a Tantra, you become Tantric. Shakta,
But you're all going
Shakta.
to one place through it.
Who knows where you end up? But at least you're developing values and principles and virtues in your life that are worth talking about. At least you're discussing what life is all about. At least you're opening your mind to what possibilities there could be. That, does Lord Nrsingadev, is God half man and half lion? Well, you end up thinking, well, why not? The possibility is always there. You keep it open. So that open-mindedness, that broadness allows depth to manifest.
Okay. All right. My very last question is, when it is so much about being and life and what is real, what is truth, how do these rituals come in place?
Rituals are very simply things that keep us off the streets. They're ways of bringing us together, the ways of focusing our mind, focusing our meditation, developing purity. They're tools.
But people get stuck in it.
They do, and that's very unfortunate. And that happens all the time.
On that note, we shall do a quick high five section, which is 5 questions, a sort of rapid fire. My reward to you, the Sangha, is a high five.
Okay.
How many times have you been to India, just out of curiosity?
Oh, very difficult to say. 30?
30 times.
Yeah,
okay.
something.
Okay, India for you in one word.
India in one word. That's very difficult. 3 words: people, pollution, and sound. That's India. That's not Vrindavan, which is Krishna, or Puri, which is Jagannath. So the pilgrimage places would have other words.
Okay, all right. How do you identify yourself now? Who are you?
I'm trying to be a servant of God, of Krishna, to be specific. Krishna in Vrindavan, to be specific. But that's a very clunky introduction. So I say I'm a Hindu, or I'm a Vaishnav, or I'm a Gaudiya Vaishnav, to be more specific. Or sometimes I say I'm an Irish Catholic Hindu. And they're all relevant identities. So I wear them lightly. But in myself, my identity is I'm trying to be Krishna's devotee. And I'm acting like that as best I can.
What are the 3 principles, or you can choose the number, from Hinduism, let's say, or from your learning, that you live by and have helped your life?
Well, the idea of Samadarshana, seeing everyone equally, the idea of Priti, of love, trying to be compassionate to others, trying to be thoughtful, tolerant, and kind. And the idea of humility, the idea of the courage it takes to do the right thing in a difficult circumstance, trying to practice that.
That's a very important thing you said. Right thing to do at a very difficult dharm sankat.
It's difficult to, sometimes your choice can mean you lose your job because you're not willing to do something.
Would you still do it, and what will make you do it?
No, I wouldn't do it, that's my point. And humility is the courage it takes. So we think of humility as meekness and being mild and everything, but Arjuna's humility was to fight a battle, which was quite the contrary. So humility is a very deep subject, and it's about a very soft courage that's more powerful than military.
What is the relevance of Hindu studies in the world today, and if we don't do it, what is going to be lost?
If we don't do it, Indian heritage will be lost. But also, maybe more importantly, the capacity for that heritage to be shared globally and really create a global intellectual dialogue so that we can look at the issues of the day, of identity, of the environment, of war and peace, from a global perspective and really get into what these issues are and how we can approach them much more holistically. At the moment, everything is about either or. Can they be about both and? Just add these other dimensions. I think if that's lost, that's a real loss to the planet. And India, I think, really has a responsibility to revive itself, wake itself up, to be a global player, not just in terms of politics and economics and technology, but on a much more profound level.
And how could they do that?
Education is the key. And that's why I've dedicated myself to education and developing this center as the beginning of a process. I mean, I would love to see this center help centers like this develop in India, in America, in Australasia, but particularly in India, that we develop other centers for Hindu studies that become centers of global excellence in Hindu studies, not just Indian excellence, global excellence, that they're on par with Oxford and Harvard and all these other places.
What is it about Hinduism that the Western mind or the world misunderstands and can't get?
Nearly everything at the moment. It's such a different way of thinking that India has started to think in a Western way, but intrinsically it doesn't think like that. The West doesn't get pluralism. The West doesn't get ahimsa. It doesn't get the idea that how profound the issue of non-harming is in terms of our everyday practice. It doesn't get the idea of Atma, the difference between matter and spirit, that there is a spiritual energy and it is the essence of life. And then any living form has to be respected as being special and sacred. That hasn't permeated, and it's beginning to become smaller in India. And that's just sad to see. It's redeemable, but the education is going to be the process by which it's.
You mean to
woken.
say India has started becoming westernized?
Oh, very much. I mean, everyone can see that. Even how they produce films now are based on the kind of Hollywood formula. How people speak with each other, the vocabulary they use. Everyone is learning about values and principles online, on TikTok, on WhatsApp, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. Who's teaching them? Are they an acharya, one who teaches by example, or just a guy with a computer? That's very woolly. So India has become very westernized unconsciously and uncritically, and that's the worrying part. So it's losing its grip on its own identity. It's becoming just part of the bigger world. And I hope to think that it will militate against it and wake up.
What does it need to do? More education centers and study this?
It has to study itself seriously. It has to discuss itself more seriously. The media in India is just it's just about performance and facade and look at this. I think what's he doing? I don't know what he's doing. And it's just speculation. Everything needs to get a little bit more thoughtful.
I get that. If you could meet a historical figure, it could be spiritual, of what you have studied, who would you like to meet and what would you like to ask?
I'd like to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from Bengal, 15th century saint, and I would like to ask how I could serve him.
If someone in today's, the children, if you want them to start on this journey, what is it that we could recommend for them to start with?
Start by reading maybe the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, particularly study the Gita, find a course, find a good teacher, and really look at the Gita. It's like high school Indian philosophy and theology. And if they can get into the Bhagavad Purana, that would be a university level.
To the Indians today, if you had any message to give from this platform, what would that be?
Begin to understand your heritage. Stop disowning it. Stop saying that it's not worthy, that it's uninteresting. These are very ignorant statements from people who haven't studied them, who haven't read them, who haven't looked at them. Why would we say that? Who ditches their own heritage? No, look at it for what it is. Study it, read it. Even superficially, you'll get benefit from it. But don't reject it without having first studied it. Please take it seriously.
There are such good examples of strong women goddesses in India. Yet we see dowry, we see suppression. While in the Western concept, you don't have any strong women like that. And yet you see empowerment. Why?
It depends where you go in India as to where you see empowerment. I see empowerment when I go and eat with the Gujarati family, and the mother is without doubt the head of the family in the home. Outside, she gives all relevance to Prabhu, he's wearing the trousers and everything, but when push comes to shove, there's patriarchy and there's matriarchy in India. So it's not simple. I think the jati system is discredited of how people want to promote family through a patriarchal lineage. I think that's a silly system. It's not necessarily even an Indian system. I think that has to be questioned. The whole dowry thing is just about money. It's about nothing else. These have to be questioned intelligently. If people say that they're religious, prove it. Show me in the scripture. And I think we can have a proper discussion about it.
Another discussion would be due, otherwise we'll keep going on.
Okay.
But let's do this.
There you go.
Thank you so very much. My brain has yet to, I don't know how much have you imbibed in this one life. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Shaunaka Rishi Das Ji, thank you. It is very calm to sit with Shaunaka. Really is. When I came to do the research and now itself, you just go with a calm, but with a lot of thought. Your mind is rumbling and thinking. And that's what this episode also intends to do. I don't know how much we answered, but I think for me it did, that faith can actually needs no label, really. Shraddha can be manifested in many different ways. But thank you for watching and listening to this episode. And please do give your feedback. It's very valuable. And as they say, do follow, subscribe, like to keep us going and in business as well. So thank you, take care, and God bless.